Hey, everybody. Today, we're going to talk about the Portland housing market, what we're seeing, what we think is going to happen moving forward, and what has happened year to date through November, specifically looking at average sales price, what's happening with new listings, what's happening with pending sales, what's happening with closed units. My name's David Caldwell. I'm here with Katie Henderson. We're real estate brokers with Hillshire Realty Group at eXp Realty. And if you're listening, prepare to be bored or wowed. I don't know. Bored or wowed. Probably bored. Maybe Katie said maybe both. So I think the way we like to start this usually is talking about the average sales price. And this is getting redundant maybe, but I believe that if you ask the average person on the street today, if home values are up or down, they're going to say they're down in Portland, but they're not down. The average sales price has actually increased 7.4% over the same time period last year. The average sales price has moved from $571,100 to $613,300. So Katie, when you think of that statement I made, that most people probably think home values are down, that seems real based on conversations that you've been having with the consumer, correct?
Yeah. I actually had that conversation yesterday. I was at a showing, and the feedback I got from the buyers is, we're just going to kind of wait and essentially time the market and see what happens and wait for prices to drop. And we were able to have a really honest, open dialogue about the fact that could happen, but it's not likely because that's not where the trend is going.
Yeah, I think that like people see price reduction and they associate that with declining market. Now, I've been doing this for 15 years, and price reductions are just a normal occurrence in a normal real estate market. Even in 2021, there were homes that were doing price reductions. We just weren't really paying attention to that. And the price reduction was more of like a what's wrong question. And in the market today, a price reduction is more of like an expectation. People are just waiting for the price reduction, but it might not come, right?
I heard that exact statement from buyers, several different buyers. They just say, well, we're going to just wait for the price reduction before we write. And I tell them, well, if you love this home, the chances are that somebody else really does too. And those are the homes that tend to go pending within 3 or 4 days. It's still happening.
I heard that today from a listing agent on a multi-million-dollar property, that same statement. And, I look at it this way. There's houses in any market that are priced appropriately. There's houses that are in any market that are priced inappropriately. In the Great Recession, where housing prices were going down, as a listing agent, there were several occasions where I had multiple offers on a listing. And as a buyer's agent, I competed with multiple offers. Multiple offer situations aren't exclusive to value in a marketplace where values are increasing, but we're in a marketplace where values are increasing. And that's something that's really important to note, because I think this whole thing of timing the market, I understand wanting to understand what the market's doing before we act. That's why we do videos like this. This is why we do other content, telling people our opinion of what the market's doing. And there's really no better way to get that information than just with meeting with us and having us go through it with you and talk to you about what's going on with your property, whether you want to do something in the next 60 days or you want to do something 6 years from now. We work in an advisory business. Advisory means we're giving people advice. Doesn't mean we're sitting at your table selling you constantly. It just means that we're going to look at the market for what it really is. Today I looked at a property that if it sold at its current sales price would be the second most expensive sale in Oregon City in the last 12 months. It's worth it. And if that property was listed for sale earlier in their year, January, February, March, when rates were in the 3s or 4s, man, it might have gotten more, because people buy houses like they buy cars. They don't worry as much about the monthly or about the sales price or the debt as they do about the monthly payment. And the monthly payment on that house is much more expensive today, but the house is still worth it. So let's look and see what's happening with new listings. So, let me get my fancy slides up. So, darn it. We're not going to edit this out because this is a no editing. This is the no editing show. It's this one. Okay. So when we look at new listings decreased 25% from the same time period last year when we look at the month of November. And they decreased 33.7% from October. We're seeing less people bringing their homes to the market. And I think a lot of that has to do with the thought that there's no buyers buying. Values are coming down, so people are going to wait. Now, simultaneously, we're seeing months of inventory increase. We're hearing people talk about there's more options. And the reality is there are more options. But if we want to look at something from a forward-looking indicator type of a thing, if interest rates continue to increase, we're likely to see in a marketplace right now where we're slow on pending sales, and we'll get to pending sales. But if interest rates decrease, we're likely to get into a market that accelerates again, where people are kind of standing in line waiting for homes. If we just look at new listings year to date through November in the last 5 years, you actually see we're at the lowest point of new listings year to date for the past 5 years. And that's really important to note, because in 2021, we had 16% appreciation, and it wasn't all fueled by low interest rates. It was fueled by low inventory and high demand. And what we have today is we have a higher months of inventory. Months of inventory describes the pace that homes are taking to sell. It describes how many homes are currently on the market. But we still have to look at how many homes are being listed for sale. And if we look at how many homes are being listed for sale over the last 5 years, what you actually see is that we still have a housing shortage. Now, if you're a buyer, like if we talk to Katie about her experience or my experience working with buyers right now, they have more options, right?
And I think I think the kind of general sentiment too is that they've gained back a little bit of the power that they feel like they lost when rates were so low. It felt like we were just fighting a losing battle. Essentially, I remember during that time frame going back to buyers and saying, we didn't get this one, we didn't get this one, we didn't get this one. And now strategy is back, and it's a little bit exciting. And I think that's part of what makes this job fun again. So there is some beauty in where we are in the market right now, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're a buyer, as a buyer, you want options. As a buyer, you want the ability to buy a house at a fair price, or buy a house at market value, or buy a house under normal market circumstances. Not negotiating repairs isn't a normal market circumstance. Waiving your appraisal isn't a normal market circumstance. Yeah. In the marketplace we're in today, you might not get a 10% discount. You might only get a 1% discount, or you might get a no % discount, meaning you pay full price for a property, because we're still seeing that in a lot of markets. But you're probably not going to waive your appraisal. You're likely going to get repairs. The conditions of the market sentiment is that things are much more in favor of the buyer. But if we actually look at it from a statistical standpoint and we remove people's opinions, the data actually would still suggest we're in a seller's market. We just have a lot of sellers acting like it's a buyer's market, and bless those agents on the other side of those transactions, because we love to work with them when we're representing buyers. You know, those are the agents that are really easy to negotiate with, because the first negotiation is not against the seller, it's against the seller's agent. If you get the seller's agent to believe what you believe, it becomes a lot easier to win a transaction. The reality of the marketplace today is if you're a buyer in the marketplace, you have more options. The reality of the marketplace, if you're a seller, home values have still increased over 7%. And some of the suburban marketplaces, home values are up over 10%. There are people moving, transitory buyers from other marketplaces coming here. And there's people that are living in Multnomah County. If you look at the statistics, they're moving out to Clackamas County and they're moving out to Washington County. So the suburban markets are actually outperforming the urban market. But in general, the metro area is up 7.4%. We have 2.4 months or 2.6 months of inventory, which is still a seller's market. And we have a shortage of good listing inventory, as we just looked at. But now we're going to talk about pending sales because we also have a shortage of buyers. So when we look at pending sales decreased 43% from the same time last November, and they decreased 18% from October. Now, we talked about this last month. October represented basically a 10-year low for pending sales during the month of October. And that same thing happened in November. So this wasn't a surprise for us. Now, is this a concern? Should we be concerned about the lack of buyers when it comes to home values? Well, yes and no, right? When a seller puts a property on the market, that's not an indication that they have to sell. I was in a room a couple months ago with, I don't know, whether there's 75 real estate agents. And I asked that question. It's like, how many people are actually working with on an annual basis that have to sell their house? And the reality is, it's not a high percentage. It's a very low percentage of people that get to a place where they have to sell. So most people, this is a want, not a have to. If I want to sell my house, I don't have to reduce the price to be competitive. If I want to sell my house, I can stand to have a little bit higher days on market. But when we look at pending sales from an analytical standpoint, from a what's important standpoint, we're at a 5-year low. And if we look at 2020 and 2021, those are kind of outlier years. Those are years where we had more than a typical amount of sales. So we really have to compare 2018 to 2019, to 2022. And I just said that, October, November represent 10-year lows for pending sales during those months. Those sales are lagging. Now, some of those sales maybe have moved forward, and moved forward to 2020, 2021. People bought before they thought they were going to because of interest rates. Or it's also reasonable to think that they're going to move into 2023. One thing that's really clear when you look at the averages for Portland, if we look at specific months for pending sales, they almost always repeat. We know when the high months are, we know when the low months are. Every single year in Portland, we sell pretty much the same amount of homes within a couple thousand. It doesn't vary that much, but pending sales are at a 5-year low. I've been saying this a lot in our content. If you're a seller, maybe on the market listening to this right now, your price reduction may not get your house sold. We're not in a marketplace where a $5,000 or $10,000 price reduction might make a difference. During the month of November, there were a total of 4,235 listings that could have been purchased in the Portland metro area, according to RMLS. 1,498 homes went pending. Like, it's hard to bridge that gap with a 1, 2, 3, or 4% price reduction. If you're a buyer listening, make a list of 10 homes. Someone's going to give you a deal. You're probably not going to make it to home 3 or 4. Now, the home you really love, they might not negotiate with you, right? Because some sellers are smart not to negotiate. We're technically an appreciating market. But would you add anything to that, Katie, or did I beat a dead horse enough?
No, I think this speaks to also, on the other end of it, I've had conversations with sellers right now. So what do you think the importance is of pricing your property appropriately to begin with, so you don't have to make that decision to have to come up with reductions in coming weeks, and just preparing your home for sales? Does that look different than it did 2 years ago?
It does. And it depends on the market segments, meaning the price point you're in. This question is going to vary. Having a home ready for the market, which looks different in certain price points, but being ready for whatever price point that is, exceedingly important, because now we're in a beauty contest, right? And you have to stand out in a sea of a lot of homes, right? And in Portland, we have our historic homes, which, let's be real, a lot of them look the same. right? A lot of them just been updated in different eras. And you got into the suburbs and there's 400 homes and there's 5 floor plans. And Portland is kind of a sea of sameness to a certain extent. You know, you're buying neighborhood, you're buying location in the metro area. You have to stand out. You have to be in as good of condition as you can be in your price band. Starting out at the right price, is important, because high days on market, they do kind of kill your ability to negotiate. Even in a high days on market marketplace, you're better off to have low days on market on your house, because the higher the days on market, the more there is of a perception that your house is overpriced and nobody wants it. It's the car that sits on the lot for too long. It's the sweater on the shelf that, you know, the price hasn't adjusted and it doesn't move. Eventually it makes its way to the clearance rack, right? Days on market are really important. Pricing your home appropriately to the market is important. I guess one thing I'd say with that is no one can truly time the market, but the best time to put your house on the market might not be the time you want to put it on the market. Because there are certain homes in the Portland metro area, they're going to have a really difficult time selling in November, December, but they're probably really primed to sell in April, May, June, July, because maybe it's a house with more square footage that requires school age kids, right? Who's your buyer demographic? Your timing versus timing the market might not be the same thing, but the market's going to tell you if you're priced appropriately or not. I mean, that's the beautiful thing about a marketplace.
Yeah, I mean, I saw an example of that yesterday. Buyer sent me a listing. I check out who the listing agent is, very reputable agent in the market. It's priced appropriately, marketed effectively. There's an offer deadline set within 72 hours. So we're not kind of in this space where everything's just sitting and buyers can take their time and always have this like negotiating power. I think it's just such a nuanced market. It's like a word I would use. I think every situation is so different. That's why it's really important to work with your agent, or you know that what's going on with that specific listing. Anyway.
We have short memories, right? It wasn't too long ago that everyone thought that they were going to work from home forever, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're going to be working from home forever. No one's going to be in any office spaces. I talked to my commercial broker today about like maybe looking at another office space to lease. And he's like, Dave, it's not like there's deals in the marketplace. Like rents have stayed consistent, tenancies have stayed consistent. Where you want to be, it's like not going to be easy. Mm-hmm. That sucks, right? But that's like the housing market, right? We're in an area that's in demand, right? It's slow to build houses here because building houses is so expensive. It's hard to be optimistic. Excuse me. It's hard to be optimistic as a home buyer when you're hearing all this negative news, right? Like the news is so negative. But if you're a home buyer or home seller, I mean, the average American homeowner has a net worth 40 times greater than that of a renter. And in the last 30 years, there's been 26 years of appreciation in Portland and only 4 years where the market went down. And we all know what 4 years those were. They were in the Great Recession when people were getting terrible mortgages. The mortgage reform and the quality of the mortgages we have today is incredible, which has led us to like literally one of the lowest mortgage default rates in history. Like we have homeowners with equity and sound mortgages. We have a great asset if you want to build wealth. But if you watch the news, you wouldn't think that, because the news is this percentage of homes aren't selling. We're selling this many less homes than the greatest year in real estate ever. And guess what? Some marketplaces, you guys, are declining, but Portland has yet to see that. And we've had many months for that to happen. So let's switch to closed sales, because this is getting, this is so boring for people listening to. If we look at closed sales decreased 42% from November 2021. They decreased 42% from maybe the single best year or the best November in the last 10 years for closed sales. It's logical that they're going to decline because remember, in October, we had a bad year, and that's something we need to watch. That's something that's concerning. We need to watch what's happening, in 90-day and 180-day chunks to the average sales price, but the average sales price in Portland is still increasing. Now, if we look at the same information and we look over the last 5 years, let's look at 2020 and 2021 first. We're down 29,000, 32,000, and we're sitting at 26,000 pending sales. Well, we're off about closed sales. We're off about 1,000 closed sales from 2018, 2019, which is a normal year. So for normal years, those were years where we still saw healthy appreciation, that no one was upset that they owned real estate in the Portland metro area. So we're going to see that come down a little bit more for December, right? We're going to definitely close off December at a 5-year low for pending sales. But there's one of two things that happen. People bought ahead of the market 2020, 2021, or those sales are just going to move into 2023. So let's shift a little bit to outlook. So the Portland market's going to appreciate somewhere in the 7% range in 2022. We had 16% appreciation the year before. 16 to 7 is a big drop. We've also had 9 months of negative viewpoint on the news. There's been so much negative news. We had interest rates increase in April. What could happen next year to make home values go down? And I think that's the big question. Katie and I just did a video about this the other day. You know, if interest rates stay high, negativity stays where it's at, pending sales stay low, it's reasonable to think that 7% could turn into 2% or negative 2%. That's reasonable to think that could go down. If interest rates stay on the trend they're on today, with interest rates actually have been coming down in the mortgage market, and you've actually seen more showing activity. Our team, we're showing more people houses today than we were a month ago. It's also reasonable to think, with the low interest rates that we have, that we could see 6, 7, 8, 9% appreciation. Like, that's reasonable as well, because what we have for the last decade is we have a case study of a certain amount of people buy and sell houses every year in Portland. Well, through November, we still have a listing shortage. A lot of people are going to have a hard time giving up their 2 or 3 or 4% mortgage interest rate and trade it for a 5% interest rate. It's logical to think that we're going to stay in a housing shortage, right, Katie?
I think so. I do think there is, I think you and I have talked about this before. If you're a buyer right now, there could be some danger in waiting too long or trying to time the market. If rates go down again, we might end up with a line out the door for showings again, like we had previously, and they could be paying over list price again. I mean, for homes. So we just really don't know what's going to happen. So it's, I think, up to each buyer, case by case basis, to have a candid conversation with the trusted real estate professional to decide what the best course of action is for them. But it could go a few different directions. Well,
and I think that's the thing about the real estate market, right? Is depending on the segment you're buying, depending on the price point, depending on the location, depending on your goals, it's totally different. You know, one of the lessons I had to learn in real estate is money isn't money, meaning that, like, if 5 people make an offer on the same $500,000 house, but all 5 of those people's down payment is different, their money isn't worth the same. How do you represent someone with the lowest down payment amount and make their offer the most attractive? Well, that comes down to the negotiation and the positioning and the relationship the agent can create with the other agent. When you're selling a home in a subdivision and there's 5 of the same property, what's your strategy? You know, we talked about this a couple months ago on this show. We sold a property for almost $100,000 more on the listing side, the same floor plan, about 5 houses away, than another agent who's really reputable in our marketplace. We rep the buyer on his property for literally about $100,000 less, same house, almost same year built. You know, the backyard and the one I sold was nicer, but it wasn't $100,000 nicer. That agent had a price reduction schedule every 2 weeks. They were going to reduce the price by X. Guess what? We watched it and then we went and negotiated hard. But that's a very expensive strategy if you're a home seller. It's very expensive. You do need to work with an agent who has a strategy to help you navigate literally the single largest purchase you'll ever make. I mean, these are the single largest purchases people ever make usually at the time of purchase. And if you're downsizing and it's not the single largest, it's still really important because it's a very expensive transaction. And this isn't like going to the car dealership and like picking out, like, do I want a Jetta or a Passat, or do I want this Volkswagen? This is where you live. This is where you build memories. This is your net worth. This is a very important transaction. And, you know, I hate to say it, like in our industry, most people know how to work the paperwork in a transaction, but they might not even know the average sales price. And if they don't know the average sales price of an area, or they can't figure it out really quickly, because they don't have to have it memorized, but if they can't get it like within a couple minutes, well, I don't know, I would let them advise me.
And to give our team a little shout out, I think that's part of the beauty of what we have going on here, to where we can come to a meeting of the minds, you know, with each other, to where if I'm meeting with a client and I hit some kind of roadblock and I think I know what I'm going to do, but I'm not quite sure, I can have a conversation with you and say, hey, this is the direction I'm thinking of going with my client, or this is what I'm going to advise. What do you think? And I think some agents just don't have that resource that we have built in on our team. So I think that's something really special about what we have to offer.
Yeah, you know, in our group, I want us to be like the most competent advisors. That's what's really important to me. And I was with one of the, you know, statistically best real estate agents in Portland today, because he sells some of the most real estate. And it's funny because he's like, I always watch your videos for market updates. But do you think that that helps me negotiate a transaction with him? Right? Like, we have trust. He knows that I'm competent. Like, my opinion is going to carry some amount of weight as long as I can justify the position. And that's something that helps in negotiating. And I do think that sometimes that's an underappreciated thing in what we do, right? Because I think some people just look at us and go, well, they're nice and they open doors. This business is full of nice people that open doors. But you set it up great for people to get in contact with us. And if anyone's listening to this still, bless your heart, because I know how boring these can be. So Katie, if people wanted to get in touch with you, how would they do so?
You can email me directly at Katie, Katie at hillshirerealtygroup.com, or call or text me 503-704-6673. I love a call or a text anytime.
And the best way to get a hold of me is David at hillshirerealtygroup.com. If you guys have any questions, you want us to break down your local market, your zip code, the value of your home, we don't care if you want to sell today or 10 years from now. Our goal is to earn just the opportunity to interview for the business. We're not even asking you to work with us, but we're just asking for the opportunity to interview for the future business. We appreciate you listening and watching, and we'll see you next time.